23-3 work together. Joanna and Stefan Salo agreed to liquidate their partnership on March 31st of the current year. On that date, after financial statements were prepared and closing entries were posted, the general ledger accounts had the balances shown in question assets. Journalize the transactions completed by Salo Company during April of the current year. So here they give us our general ledger with the accounts that we'll need to look at, and then they also give us our transactions. So we'll start on April 1st. It says that we received cash from the sale of office equipment, $12,000, receipt number 421. So I'm going to make things easy, and right away I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to put in my date first, and I know that I'm receiving cash of $12,000, so I'm going to put that in as my debit. Okay, so next thing that we need to do is we need to go back and look at our general ledger accounts. So when we look at our office equipment, it shows that we have $30,000 worth of office equipment. We also need to look at our accumulated depreciation for that office equipment. So the accumulated depreciation is $16,500. So what was that? 30,000. We're going to figure out our book value. So 30,000 minus the accumulated depreciation of 16,500. That gives us a book value of 13,500, and we received $12,000. So that means we're going to subtract those two, and it means that we have a loss on realization of 1,500. So I know that I'm going to debit my loss on realization. Remember, you debit the loss, you credit the gain. So I'm going to put in that debit of 1,500 because we always should list our debits first. I'm going to go back to, I have receipt 421. Okay, now I need to get rid of the office equipment. So I'm going to be crediting my office equipment. And then I also need to get rid of that accumulated depreciation office equipment. So I'll be debiting that. So since we put our debits in first, let's go ahead and put that in. The accumulated depreciation office equipment. We will debit for 16,500. And then we're going to be crediting office equipment for 30,000. So it's always a good idea to double check. So add up your debits. Yep. So our debit should equal our credits. Okay, so that was our first one. The next one on the first, it says we received cash for the sale of supplies. So again, I'm going to put in my date first. I'm also going to put in my cash debit. I'm receiving $1,900. Okay, I need to go to my general ledger and I'm going to look at my supplies account. So here it says my supplies are worth $2,400. I don't have accumulated depreciation on that, so $2,400 is simply my book value. So remember, I'm going to take my asset that I received, my cash that I received, $1,900, minus the $2,400 in supplies. That tells us that we have a loss on realization of $500. So remember, the loss is going to be a debit. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. A loss of $500. I have receipt 422 for my source document. And then I also need to close my supplies then, so I will be crediting my supplies for 2,400. Again, we want to add up our two debits and make sure that those equal our one credit, 2,400. On the third, it says that we received cash from the sale of our truck, $15,000, receipt number 423. So we are on April 3rd. I'm receiving cash for my truck, $15,000. just going to go ahead and put my receipt number in right now too. So R423. And now let's go and look at our accounts and see what we have. So here's our truck account. Our truck is worth, or we bought it at $51,000. We need to look at our accumulated depreciation, which is, so we're going to subtract that, so minus 36,600. So that gives us a book value of 14,400. So we would take our 15,000 minus the 14,400, and that means that we are getting a gain on realization of $600. Now, we know that a loss is a debit, so a gain is going to be a credit. So let's go ahead and put in our accumulated. We're going to close up our accumulated first. So accumulated depreciation of our truck is going to, we're going to debit that for 36,600. We're going to credit our truck account for 51,000. And then we also said that we had a gain on realization of 600. So we'll credit that for 600 as well. Okay, again, make sure that your debits equal credits. All right, we should be good. All right, so that's our first three. Now we're moving on. So we need to go to our next journal. On the 5th, it says that we paid cash to all of our creditors for the amounts owed. Check number 547. So we'll put in the date of April 5th. We're using check 547. And it doesn't tell us how much we're paying, so we need to go to our general ledger. We're going to go down to our accounts payable. Our accounts payable was worth $2,500, so that means we're going to debit accounts payable for $2,500, and we're going to credit cash for $2,500. Okay, remember, since we don't have an account to go into the account title, we need to put in that check mark. On the 6th, we distributed balance of gain on realization to Joanna Sallow 60% and to Stefan Sallow 40%, memorandum 65. So now we're going to go down to our general journal. And we should have our closing entries title on there, but I don't believe they're wanting us to put that in there for this. So let's go ahead and we need to look back and see what our gain and our loss totals are. Because they don't have that for us in our general ledger since we just updated those. So first we're going to be looking at our gain. And when we look at our gain on realization, we have $600. We only have one entry to that. So we need to divide up that $600. So let's put in April 6th. Now we know when we look up here, we're crediting our gain. So that tells us to close it. We need to debit it. So we'll go ahead and put that in first, gain on realization. And we'll debit that for 600. And we're using document number M65. Okay, so now we need to divide it up between the two partners. So I'm going to put in Joanna Sallow Capital. And it says that she's going to get 60% of that gain. So we'll take 600 times the 60%. So she's going to get $360 of that. And then we'll put in Stefan Sallow Capital. And he gets 40%, so 600 times 40%, or we could just subtract the difference too. So 240. I'm going to make sure that we add those up, and that equals 600. Okay, the next one, now we're going to distribute the balance of the loss on realization to Joanna and Stefan. Again, they get 60% and 40%. So I'll put in the date of the 6th. Now we need to go back up. We have two different transactions to our loss of realization. So our first one was for $1,500, and then our second one was for $500. So that means that we have $2,000 worth that we're going to need to distribute. Those are debits. So to close that, we're going to have to credit the loss of realization. So we know that we're going to need to list our capital accounts first. So Joanna Sallow Capital. Memorandum 66. She is going to get 60% of that $2,000 loss. So that should be $1,200. And Stefan is going to get 40% of that $2,000 loss. So $800. And then we will credit our loss on realization for $2,000. Okay, we have one more transaction left. We need to distribute the remaining cash to the partners. We're using two different checks, check number 548 and check number 549. Since we're writing checks, that tells us we're going to be in our cash payments journal. So I'm going to go here and put in the 6th. I'm going to use my first check, 548. This one I'm going to be writing to Joanna Sallow Capital. And now I need to figure out how much cash I'm writing to her. So I'm going to go to my general ledger and I'm going to look at what she has for her capital right now. She has $26,800. But we need to go and we need to look at these two closing entries. She had a gain of $360, so we need to add $360 to her account. And then she had a loss of $1,200, so we need to subtract the $1,200. That means that we are going to be writing her a check for $25,960. We'll credit cash and we'll debit her account. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for Stefan. So when we look at his capital account, he has $26,000 in there. Scroll down. He had a gain of $240. And then he had a loss of $800. So he's going to be getting $25,440. We're going to credit cash that much because we're writing a check to him. And that check number we will use is check number 559. Okay, those are all of our transactions. We recorded our losses and our gains. We paid our debtors, or our creditors, sorry. We closed our gain on realization and our loss on realization, and then we paid out cash to our partners. Okay, you can now go on to 23-3 on your own. That was the end of the chapter, so make sure that you are paying attention to the due dates for the application problems.